Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Antry, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with...
Rob H. This is AV Rant, the show where we answer your questions about home theater and all things audio-video. And welcome back, Tom. How you doing, buddy?
I'm back. I am hanging in there. I'm much closer to my screen than I normally am because my laptop has to actually be on my lap because I can't put it further away because my leg has to be elevated and you would be looking at my foot. And while many people would probably agree that that's a better view of me, I'm going to go with the close-up messy hair Tom
That's
guy.
okay. It's pretty normal as far as broadcast goes to just see a person's face, so you're not in strange company or anything with that view.
Probably. Got a perfect face for radio. Anyway, so update, yes, I had ACL reconstruction. I thought it was going to be no big deal. They told me you'll be walking around in a couple of days, which I technically was. But yeah, it's not going nearly as well as I had hoped. So while my physical therapist tells me I'm way ahead schedule and they're doing all sorts of fun exercises that hurt like hell, I'm still not really all that mobile. I'm not able to drive. I take a Vicodin every 6 hours, which I hate. I hate taking them because they make me sleepy and generally unfocused. So I'm still trying to do a little work for Audioholics on the side and getting some stuff done, so you may see a couple articles pop up for me over there, mostly just apparently pissing off everybody at AVS. I don't really care at all.
I expressed confusion on AVS and got lambasted for people saying, why are you so outraged about stuff? I'm like, all I said is I'm confused by this, so I don't know what's going on with the people over there. They need to take a chill pill.
I think it's a lot like this whole gamer. There's a gamer thing going on right now. You may have heard Gamergate is apparently a thing. Everybody's very angry in the gaming community. I still associate myself as being a gamer, even though I have not played a game that was not on my phone in years. I think might be pretty close to how long it's been since I played a game, but I still associate myself as a gamer. So whatever. Anyway, so I am back, and thank you, Lee, for stopping in and helping out.
Yes, thank you.
I may or may not be very focused during this, but I will try my best not to fade out and or fall asleep. I have not taken, well, it's been 3 hours since my last Vicodin. I'm 3 hours away from my next one, so kind of plan that so that I would be at my most lucid and least pain. Closer to midnight when I will be taking the Vicodin, I will be not happy and very willing to talk about how unhappy I am about this. Now, we're going to go on with all the stuff that we're going to talk about, but first, of course, we need to thank our listeners of the week. This week we've got Edon, who's kind enough to go to the www.avrant.com website, where he clicked on the cup of coffee to send us a donation. Robert, I put VDW because that man has a lot of last names. And Robert was also kind enough to do that. He helped support the podcast by giving your donations. You're supporting the podcast, allowing us to continue on. Eventually, someday, we may get to the point where we've got enough money in the the AV Rant coffers where we will buy a piece of gear just to review it, and then, I don't know, give it away or something. But we're a little ways away from that at this point. So thank you guys. If you would like to do that and donate to help the podcast go, you can go to avrant.com and click on the cup of coffee. It's a PayPal donation, and we'd be happy to have you support the podcast. Now, we got a lot of stuff to discuss. First, a couple of quick announcements. Rob was on the the Entertainment 2.0, and was that Home On podcast? What?
Well, I
wasn't
on that one. Yeah, those are two different podcasts because the hosts of Entertainment 2.0 they do two different podcasts.
Oh,
well,
right.
Richard does. Yeah.
All right. Anyways, so Richard and Josh from Entertainment 2.0 we've extended invitations to them. We have? I guess we have.
Yeah. You were that out of it last week, huh, man?
I was not. I remembered. I'm just being cranky. Josh and Richard have been extended an invitation to be on the podcast. Now, later on in the podcast, we will be talking about this whole Odyssey 0 dB setting thing in your receiver that we have been talking about a little bit. Rob is under the impression that if you set your receiver to 0 dB, it makes Odyssey run better. I got sick of hearing that crap, so I Twittered, DM'd, direct messaged Chris from Odyssey. I'm going to go with just Chris. Can we just go with Chris because I cannot say his last name?
Just say Chris K. K, yeah.
There, Chris K. He has a lot of K's in his name. Kyriakakis, I think.
Kyriakakis, I think it is.
Kyriak
I have no idea if that's
Kyriakis.
Greek last name.
We're gonna have to
So
ask him. Anyways, I asked him, and we're gonna reveal his answer later on in the podcast. But at the same time, I said, "Hey, dude, we would love to have you on the podcast, talk about Odyssey." And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." So we are gonna be corresponding with him. I would have done that already, but drugs. So instead, I took a nap. So we're gonna be talking with Chris and get Chris on the podcast to talk about Odyssey. So. The Josh and Richard from Entertainment 2.0, they're all about home theater stuff, PCs. Is that what they're about? Home automation?
Smartphone integration, and home automation is the big thing, the Home On podcast there. So,
okay.
Yeah, they're experts in those fields, which Tom and I, we dabble in those things, but not necessarily experts in those areas.
I don't dabble. My idea of home automation is I have 3 boys, and I tell them to turn things on and or off.
It's probably more reliable.
That's how I do that. And, of course, if you have some questions for Chris from Odyssey, now's the time. So get your questions in by emailing us at tom@avrant.com, rob@avrant. Oh, this is going to be a bad podcast. I almost called you Chris. rob@avrant.com. You can Twitter Rob at @FirstReflect, and me, I'm at Tom at avrant_Tom. You can, of course, leave a question on the podcast page. You can go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast. It's all one word, and leave us a question there. I'm also on G+. Leaving a question there is really hit or miss. You're kind of taking it.
Good luck.
Good luck with that one.
We'll
I may notice it. I may not. I don't really know. So. My phone has been less than stellar at telling me that I have questions waiting for me, and even if it does, I think I ignore it more often than not. That being said, we've got lots of stuff to talk about tonight, which we may or may not get through depending on my level of pain. If my pain gets too high, at some point the podcast might just go, all right, we're out. That's going to be the end of the podcast. That'll be Tom's. I got to go crunch some Vicodin. But hopefully we'll get through all of them. We got Eliezer, who's got some comments about Lee. Jonathan has also a comment, I guess, kind of for Lee about the DAC catalog, whatever the heck that is. Cameron has dabbled with slapping and echoing. Galen updates us on his ongoing Onkyo AVR warranty replacement, which we've been talking to him a little bit about, giving him our suggestions. Jared found some new B&W headphone reviews, and I guess Paul B wanted to get some a ways back, and I kind of weighed in, which I'm going to have to make a small correction on that.
Oh, okay.
Again, we're going to be talking a little bit about Odyssey and the 0dB thing. Michael S. Might have found the ultimate in speaker decoupling, which is interesting. Alan G. Found the last subwoofer talk that you guys did was useful.
Yep.
I don't care. Anyways, and Rob wants to know about this whole model train thing, which I didn't listen to last week's podcast because drugs. And that's going to be my excuse for everything for a while. Drugs. So, hey, fun fact, okay? Because apparently they really wanted to give me Percocet because Percocet apparently works better than Vicodin, from what they tell me. I don't know. All I know is I got uber itchy on it, and I could not sleep because of it. They're like, yeah, that might kill you. You should stop taking that. I'm like, oh. Thank you. Like Vicodin doesn't work as well, but hey, it maybe won't kill you. I'm like, okay.
Preferable.
So, yes, that's good. Jared wants to know how his diffuse surround speakers will affect Odyssey. Mark is trying to help his dad with surround sound speakers and subwoofer purchasing. And Barney wants to know if Chernov's remapping is a totally different way of setting up Dolby Atmos. Jay switched subwoofer cables, and now he's getting some thumping. That's. Did you put it in your car? Jonathan wants to tailgate with good sound. Gary, Infinite Gary, will probably have to bump, but wants to know which projector screen we choose. Michael wants to know what.
Yeah, Tom's back, all right.
Poor
We joked about that last week in the podcast. You never listened to.
I'm never listening to it. I might listen to it. I might. I will say that I think I've watched I haven't watched it, but I've started playing almost everything, even remotely interesting, on Netflix in the last couple of days. It's the last week or two. It's just been brutal. I did find a couple of gems, but a lot of it's absolute garbage. Michael wants to know what tips us off about how a subwoofer perform, and Bruno wants to know the order in which he should choose his gear, we should choose his gear. I will say it's interesting. His room is not unlike the room that I went to the other day when I took that motorcycle ride. It's kind of
Uh-huh.
similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar, and it kind of struck me. Alex wants to know if mixing different sensitivity speakers could be harmful to a system, and Bill R is beginning a dedicated theater build and has some questions. So, will we get to all that? I don't know.
Sounds like a lot.
Stranger things have happened. So,
We can if we go quickly.
we can if
Are
we
we
go
going
quickly.
to try and cover any of the news? Because there was quite a bit of news, and we could try to do it super fast, or we could just leave it to the end and probably never get to it.
There's a new bigger iPhone that nobody cares about, including an
Uh-huh.
Apple Watch, which I actually like the fact that the little button on the side does something. I think that was pretty smart of them. So I'm interested to see how that works. The fact that I'll never own one, whatever, doesn't bother me.
All right.
Anything else you
That
want
was
to deal
that
with?
was the Apple news.
That was the Apple news. Yeah, so they got the new bigger screens, right? They got the 4.7, the
Yep,
5.5, and
that's right.
the
And
problem is,
no 32 gigabyte size anymore. It jumps from 16 to 64 for some reason. Hooray!
yeah, whatever. They probably weren't selling any of those. They probably just figured that anybody who was willing to buy 32 almost always bought 64. That's what I did.
Maybe.
That said, though, I hope they have a 128 now too, don't they? All right.
Yes.
Anyways, so yeah, I don't. Yeah, 2-year contract and that price seems steep to me, but I'm used to paying Google Nexus
Hmm.
prices. So the Apple Pay, I guess, is something you can scan your credit card by taking a picture of it.
Yeah, it does have to be with partners though, so it's up to retailers and everybody to get on board. So we'll see
No
if
one,
that
yeah.
happens.
Well, maybe they'll do it. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, I'm sure. No, I mean, they announced a bunch of partners, so
I was just getting to the point in
in their
Australia when I
horrible
left
live stream.
where that Google Wallet thing was going to start working,
I know.
and I moved. And now, of course,
Ah.
not even in Australia, I could do the chip thing where you wave the card over the top and the chip thing works,
Hmm.
and that doesn't work here either because America. America. Okay, yeah. Dolby holds a patent on their upward firing Atmos-enabled speaker design. So if you hear them saying, the upward firing ones almost sound better than the in-wall and ceiling ones, that's why.
Yeah.
Because
The bad news is, if and when DTS UHD comes along, DTS isn't going to be able to use that same filtering thing that Atmos is using in order to make those upward firing drivers actually fool you into thinking they're above you. So, yeah, that could be not so great.
Steinway Lindorf will have an Atmos processor. Outlaw Audio has also announced one that's interesting. Dolby put out a press release with a bunch of really not all that exciting stuff in it. But
Yeah,
they did put out a
lot
big.
less than what people were hoping for.
Yeah.
Because people were hoping, oh yeah, they'll maybe, people were thinking, okay, maybe they'll announce like 5 titles, hopefully announce, all the major studios are on board. Nope, just Paramount and Warner, and only one official title, which is Transformers: Age of Extinction.
It's kind of an apropos title for them. Anyways, a white paper goes into the detail about the full 24.1.10 speaker placement, which does it ever. And now they have really lame names for everything. So instead of just having surround, you now have surround 1 and surround 2. Depending on where surround 1 is like in a specific orientation, surround 2 is in a different orientation. That's just dumb.
But the fun part is they actually have an individual name for all 34 possible speakers. So, yup.
Yeah. 4K Blu-ray is coming Christmas 2015. You're going to get 60 hertz output resolution, 10-bit color, 2020 gamut. They are saying that they're going to do some stuff on the 50 gigabyte discs. They've also got 66 gigabytes maybe planned, and definitely 100 gigabytes planned. But the bit rate that comes from each of those discs is different.
Yeah,
so the 50 gigabyte gets the slowest bandwidth and the least amount of bandwidth, and 100 gigabytes of course gets the most. So not really sure how that's going to work out. I guess it depends on how.
It's gonna be a mess.
It's going to be awesome. And I don't care about the rest of that crap, so we're skipping it. All
Alrighty.
right. Yay,
That's
news.
the news.
That was the news. All the news that was fit to report. News. Okay, so here we go with comments and updates. Eliezer, huge thanks goes out to Lee for his guest co-hosting last week because I was too busy being howling in pain. Elias sent us a lovely message saying he wasn't sure how the show would turn out without Tom's humor. Obviously not because of my insight on anything, but, not comic relief. But with Lee there, he laughed a lot and even gave us an oh my god reaction. It doesn't shock me because Lee often says stuff that makes me think, oh my god. That's dirty.
It was fun. You should
Uh,
go back and spend the 2 hours and 15 minutes
oh
that it'll
my
take to
God,
listen
dude! I
to it.
cannot believe how long that podcast was.
I
I
know.
I was like, what? I can't believe I'm the limiting factor in this whole thing. If I just let you go, you'll just keep going. Jonathan, I want to let you know that he remembers the DAC catalog very well with his long stories about how they found the products they were selling and how every one of them changed their lives. He even found the Wikipedia entry for it. Jonathan never fell for the claims, though he will admit that he bought their bread maker. Oh, I do know about DAC. That's that catalog where everything was like written in first person. I think I
Yep.
remember getting one of those once.
Isn't that what like the Peterman catalog in Seinfeld was
Yeah,
based
it's
off
kind of
of?
based on that, right? Okay. Anyway. All right, Cameron tried clapping his hands in his theater room after your discussion of Stop
Hmm.
Echo last week. He heard a weird twang, which he figures is not a good thing. You would be right. So now he's looking at some room treatments. That's probably a good idea. Galen, uh, I think we suggested that he get the. Now this is the guy who's got the warranty on his Onkyo. He's going to get a replacement. We suggested
Yeah.
that if he can, he get the TXNR818. That's no longer available, he says,
Hmm.
and it's been replaced as a replacement for his TXSR805 with his bad HDMI board. So following our advice, he will most likely pay the $600 for the TXNR929. Yay, good.
Hmm.
You should love it, I think.
Yep. Won't do
Jared,
Atmos.
a couple of weeks ago, Paul B wanted to get some BMW P7 headphones, pretty much because he liked the brand name. Jared wanted to help out with some info on the following, with a couple of shootout reviews, which we will post pretty much everywhere.
Hmm.
Both talk about the base being a bit boosted too much, and the P7 maybe being overpriced for the performance, which isn't bad, but isn't great. So I said that I thought that they sent me the P5s. I thought they were garbage, and that the P7s were considerably better than the P5s.
Right.
I have to correct myself. They sent me the P3s. I went back afterwards. I was really looking at them going because they look very similar, but
Hmm.
when I racked my brain, it was really the P3s, and the P3s were the ones, the $200 headphones, which I thought were absolute garbage. P5s I heard at the other place, and I still remember listening to all three of them. The P7s were considerably better than the other two. If I were going to buy B&W headphones, they would be the P7s. Are they overpriced? With the B&W, of course they're overpriced. I mean, let's not beat around. Get them used, dude. That's what I say. There's only a matter of time before somebody's selling them, so get them used, and then you can. There you go. Once again about this whole master volume. Okay, so the idea is that before you run Odyssey, you set the master volume dial to 0 dB, and then you run Odyssey. I DM'd Chris over Odyssey and said, "Dude, this is what we're hearing. Can this be true?" And he said, "Quote: Volume setting on the receiver is totally ignored during Odyssey calibration, as are all other internal settings. So placebo, but whatever."
Well, yeah, yeah, okay. I'm not even going to try to belabor it, but yes, that is the Odyssey part of it, which I obviously I 100% believe that. It's still the lingering question of because the things like the distances and the channel trims and the crossover is actually set by the manufacturer and not
I
by
responded
Odyssey.
to that
Yeah.
and said, "Yeah, people are saying that the channel levels are in the distances are better or set better when they put the 0 dB." And he did not come back and say, "Oh yeah, that could be possible." So I
Did he did he say anything?
he didn't say anything. But he
Okay.
did respond back and say that he would like to be on the podcast. I said at the same time.
Ah,
So
okay.
yeah. So Michael shared a link about the OM
Yes.
OM1 levitating Bluetooth speaker. It's a round speaker. It looks like a little Death Star, and it's supported by magnets, of course.
Magnets. It has
So
an
and
electromagnet in it, in
levitates.
fact.
My
So,
favorite part is they claim that they get higher sensitivity because it's
that's right.
completely decoupled, which is completely doesn't make any sense. That's
More surface area to radiate sound, I suppose, is the idea.
I don't know. It's stupid, but it's not. It's just not. So shut up. Alan, I guess your last week you talked about subwoofers. He had a similar experience
Yes.
with SVS answering his questions quickly and with care. He also wanted to see some sort of PDF files that you were talking about
Yep.
that you received from SVS, so we'll post those on the Facebook page. And I guess we will be giving a quick description of them, will we?
Well, sure, yeah, because there's four that were sent over. So the first one, it's basically all coming from a lecture from Floyd Toole, and it's actually, I think the date on it said it was like 2002. So it's kind of amazing that all of this stuff was definitely out there, and still some of it is not being applied. Although I very much agree with basically everything that's in these papers. So yeah, the first one is sort of covering the history of speaker placement all the way from mono to 7.1, and they're talking about dipoles and dispersion and boundary effects and the results of different installations like in wall and on wall versus out in the room. And then the second PDF is covering speaker design and room effects and equalization and measurements and actually applying a scientific method to designing the speakers, perhaps. And then the third one is all about bass, and that's got your room modes and room dimensions and bass traps and the idea of having full range speakers versus having a crossover system where you have your speakers playing down to about 80 hertz and then your subwoofers taking over below that. And then the fourth one is probably the pop people have already seen, which is the white paper from Harman, all about using multiple subwoofers. So the first three are less commonly seen, but definitely worth a read. Although they're quite lengthy, so it's quite a bit to read through there. But yeah, we'll post those up, and if you're interested in it, you can read through it, and it's all good info.
Yay. Okay, so last week Frank had an idea for I guess he's got a big room in his basement where he's going to be doing a 2-level model train. So what am I supposed to be saying? He's got $8,000 to spend. What should he be spending them on? Is that what sort of the idea is?
Yeah, sort of that. It was just like, I don't think I've ever seen this question before. I'm not like a model train guy, so Lee and I were both kind of geeking out over it because we thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, so, okay, because from my understanding of what I'm reading here, basically what he's going to do is put the microphone near where the train's going to come into the station, and then pipe that through with some sort of mixer board thingy, and then maybe put some extra, what do they call that? The sweeteners on it to make it sound a little bit,
could be,
maybe, yeah, better.
I'm assuming that's what the mixer and all that would be for, so.
Yeah, or it's just to mix the different microphones as it comes around. So, either way, I don't know how much bass you're going to get if you're just direct micing it. You're not doing anything else. But let's just say, for sake of argument, there is a bunch of bass and it's full 2020. There's all sorts of things going on there. You're going to put a sub in each corner because you probably can. And that's the best way to go in this situation. Get tons of corner loading. You might as well. It's going to be even out the bass anyways, but it's going to be nice and throaty and definitely shake the room. With whatever subwoofers you choose, HSU, Rhythmic, or SVS, I would just get as much sub as you possibly can. If you are going to get some actual bass, I would definitely record this. I would record this and look at the frequency response of what you're getting. Look at the histogram or whatever it is to make sure that you are actually getting enough bass to even warrant this. It might be such a small train. I mean, even though it's, I think, one of the larger models, if not the largest model, you just might not be getting as much bass as you think. It's going to be a lot of treble, in which case. So what you need is a subwoofer is placed around the room to give you all the bass, and then you want a speaker above each station, so that basically the train, unless you want it to just, because that's where the mics are going to be, right? So. That's where you're going to want to have the sound coming out from. So if you've got 4 stations, 4 speakers. If you got 6, and you have 6, 10, and you got 10, and that way you just have it mixing and as it's going around. Now it will sound like the sound's going to go in and out as it gets further away from one mic and closer to another, and so that midpoint is going to be the lowest, which won't necessarily sound natural, but it also won't be it won't be like a fake subway or a track, like a train sound track that you're playing either, so they'll be more natural. But I would, before I bought all these subwoofers, I would make sure that you're actually getting bass, and if you're not, you have to figure a way to mix some bass into it. That would be the only thing I'd be worried about.
Cool. Well,
I would also just
very similar. So.
Yeah, I would just also record it and listen to it through some headphones, really freaking loud, and see what it sounds like. And if it sounds like something you don't want to hear loud, then maybe you should rethink this whole thing and just buy a soundtrack. All right, questions from last week that apparently in 2 hours and 15 minutes you fools can get through. Here we go. Jared's installing some Polk F/XI30 bipole-dipole. This is selectable surround speaker. They're going directly to the side of his seats, and they are physically quite close. He had monopole surround speakers in those positions already and found them a bit distracting at sometimes. I would understand that. He's also planning on using the dipole mode, so they'll be diffuse and non-localizable. He would like to know if this will trip up Odyssey, though, and if there's anything he should do during the Odyssey measurements, since the seats will be right in line with the null of the dipole output. Well, I mean, first of all, I would. How would I do this? I would want you to listen to it. Before you ran Odyssey, I would just level match the speakers yourself if you have that ability. And then just listen to something that that you're familiar with, or that has some good surround stuff going on, especially pans and stuff like that. And listen to it in bipole and dipole mode, just to see if you prefer one or the other. I mean, you can always do it later, but if you're going to go through the hassle of running Odyssey, you should get sort of an idea of first which way you're going to want to do it. That being said, if you have it on dipole mode and Odyssey says, "Oh, wired out of phase, what do you want me to do?" Just ignore it. Go on with your life. Don't worry about it. If afterwards it sounds way too loud to you, if the surrounds are way too loud, well, you might have to pop them down a bit. But you can do that. You can do that with your SPL meter and everything else. But don't discount the bipole mode without trying it. Definitely try it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And the other thing I'll say is that Odyssey shouldn't have too much difficulty, or actually it's not Odyssey in this case, it's the channel trim settings and that are being set by the manufacturer. So it shouldn't have too much difficulty, because that portion of it is just taking in however much sound pressure level hits the microphone, and that's including reflected sound. And it should be able to set that all right, but this is going to be a case where, as far as Odyssey goes, as far as the actual equalizing and room correction part of it goes, this is an important time to make sure that you do what Odyssey recommends and take some measurements that are in front of and behind the main listening position, so that you're not just all in one horizontal plane that's all in line with that dipole null. Odyssey recommends you move the microphone both in front of and behind the listening position as well, and that's a very good thing to do in a case like this. That will help it determine, this is actually covered really well in those PDFs, but it'll help it determine what is a speaker anomaly and what is an actual resonance that it should try to correct for. So doing the measurements properly will help you out in a big way on this situation.
Yep. Mark is working with his dad. His dad's room already has surround positions pre-wired, but they're basically near the rear corners, about a foot below the ceiling and 5 feet behind the seating. Mark would like to know what type of speaker, monopole, bookshelf. Is that monopole bookshelf one?
Yeah.
He wants a bookshelf speaker, or a bipole dipole surround type speaker might work best for this placement, since rewiring is not open for discussion. Currently, his dad is using B&W CM7 speakers up front, driven by a Marantz receiver. Yeah, in that situation, I would go definitely with your bookshelf speaker, or some sort of monopole solution. You're not going to get any real benefit out of the diffusion, because you don't have it to your sides; it's behind you already. So go ahead and go with the direct firing and aim it down towards your listening position. I think you're going to find it's far enough away.
Play around a little bit with exactly where you end up aiming the speakers, because you don't want it to be distracting.
Right.
It shouldn't be making you turn your head around to the left or the right when a sound comes out of there. But you're probably going to want to not just have it aiming, either straight forward or directly across at one another when they're 5 feet behind you and that close to the ceiling. So yeah, you'll be playing around a little bit with the angles and the tilt. But yeah, I would also go with a monopole in a case like that, for sure.
Yep. The room is about 18.5 feet long by 13.5 feet wide by 10 feet tall, but the back is open to another room. Mark's dad doesn't really want a subwoofer. Okay.
Get him to listen to this podcast. It's
but Mark is trying to, just by listening to enough podcasts, he's just going to go, I must have one. I don't know why, but
I must have 4.
I think I have to have at least 2. Mark is trying to convince him to get one. He's fighting an uphill battle, though, so the sub needs to be inexpensive and physically small. Would one of the SVS outlet SB12 NSD subwoofers do all right? Yes, 1 would be okay, 2 would be better. Frankly, in this case, I don't know that I would fight this battle. Honestly. Mark, I don't know that I would fight this battle, and this is why. You'll be better off if you allow your dad not to have a subwoofer. Not allow, but you say, okay, you don't want a sub, that's fine. And then you get everything installed and stuff like that. You don't really worry about it, and then have dad over to your house and have a subwoofer or 2. And when Dad sees a movie and hears a movie with a sub, he goes, "Why doesn't mine sound like this?" Well, because you chose not to have a subwoofer, Dad, and that's why you don't have bass, and why Darth Vader sounds like a little girl. But that would be my suggestion. Rob?
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, if I don't know why he doesn't want one.
He doesn't want one.
I,
Doesn't make a
I,
difference.
I don't. Yeah, I know that is a bit strange. I mean, yeah, I would agree if he really doesn't want one and you're trying to squeeze money out of him to get one. I mean, obviously we all want subwoofers, but yeah, ultimately it's his setup, and yeah, if having him over to your place and hearing your system that does have subwoofers in it doesn't convince him that this is a necessary and lovely thing, then yeah, I'm not sure what else to do, but I don't know.
But that's a good sub that you've
I still
chosen.
get it.
The SV12 NSD is the sealed box.
Hmm.
It's going to get some good output. It's a big room for that sub, but it's smaller. It's not tiny, but it's smaller. Frankly, I really, you know, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how much he won't care that he doesn't have a sub, no matter what, and it'll drive you nuts. And you'll just go home and go, it's just like my mom taught me how to make tacos, and she learned from the lady next door who immigrated in from someplace south of the border. I don't know where.
Hmm.
I think they were Mexican. They might not have been though, so I don't want to say that for sure. Very nice couple. Their kids went to school with me, and the dad was like the vice principal of the school. I used to get a ride to school with him when I was in high school and stuff like that. Anyways, they taught my mom how to make tacos. My mom taught me. Well, my mom taught me it had all these shortcuts, and I took all the shortcuts out. And instead of using garlic powder, I used garlic. Instead of using onion powder, I used onions because
Hmm.
not that hard, right? And I would go to my mom's, my parents' house, and we would start making tacos. I would make the tacos, and I'm like, "Oh, that's too much work." I'm like, "Yeah, but it tastes better." She's like, "I don't care." She didn't care. I mean, she cares now because now she's been living with me for a while, and I've been doing it, and she's like, "Yeah, it does taste better." But I could not convince her of that logically because she could not. She didn't. She'd been doing it that way for so long. So you kind of have to let people come around to their own decisions in this one. Barney wants to know if Trinov's remapping is a totally different way of setting up Atmos. Now, Trinov, Barney's been looking at these descriptions of how to set up Atmos speakers and where they go, and it's coming out new stuff every day because, hi! Dan Morris and Dolby all giving specific speaker positions, but Trinov is saying their altitude would be better. Anyways, Altitude 32 processor can measure the angle and elevation of your speakers and then optimize the playback. Are these two totally different ways of setting up Atmos? No. Atmos wants your speakers to be in that place. If what the Trinov will do is measure where your speakers actually are and try to put them in that place for Atmos.
Yeah, it tries to, using some DSP and some filters and that, it tries to make it seem as though the sound of the speaker is coming from where Dolby has outlined it's supposed to be coming from. So this isn't the same thing at all
As a
of
TTS.
measuring the actual locations of your speakers and then somehow getting the Atmos renderer to send sound object sounds to those physical locations. This is saying, all right, I know where the physical locations are supposed to be going by the specification, and I know where the speakers actually are, and now I'm going to try and compensate between those two things. So, I mean, the thing is, hey, if you can afford the Altitude 32 at its somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 price tag, I mean, the Trinov system is a nice system to have, although it's the way they show it actually being set up. Usually they get someone in sort of a video chat conference like this, a representative from Trinov, because using their system is quite complex and the microphone has to be adjusted very, very carefully to get the readings that they use. So, yeah, this is obviously something that's normally done by a custom installer, and like the jump in price between the highest level Marantz and then this Trinov system is such an astronomical jump in price. So
well, Oro 3D just announced that they have a receiver too. Did you hear that?
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's called Origi or Joel or something like that. Or
yeah. What was the company that's doing? I mean, Datasat was already doing it, and Trinov was already doing it. But yeah, you're right. I saw that, and I forget the name of the company.
16.5 is what it costs, and it does Neo X and Dolby Pro Logic 2Z.
One would hope, yeah.
But it's the only one with Oro 3D. Of course, you can't play anything on it. If you go to the Oro 3D website, by the way, you can check it out. They have like a list of all the discs or the movies that there's Oro 3D mixes for, but you can't buy them in the States. I think you have to either order them from overseas or get them, and most of them are Indian movies, which. But I watched a couple. What did I watch? I watched Doom, DHOOM 3. I watched the third one first because I saw a review on it and said you didn't have to watch the other two to get it. So I watched that, and the guy's name, the main character's name, I don't know if I can say this on the podcast, but I'm going to anyways. It's Dixit, but they pronounce the X like a C. SH or CS, yeah,
Okay.
something like that. So it's his name is something like J Dixit, Dixit, something like that. And it just every time they say it, because I'm still reading the subtitles, I'm like, oh my god, I cannot believe that guy's name is that. But it's like somebody must have known, right? They must have known. But now I get all kind of weird recommendations on my a lot of dancing and singing
yes.
on my Netflix list. But that happens when okay. Let's see here. Now we're on to question topics from this week. Wow, just running through this. That's right. Okay. Jay, he has a Sherborne Pre-Pro and an Epic Empire subwoofer. Is that one of those big tall ones?
I think the Empire, wasn't that one of the dual woofer ones? Firing out of either side. I think they had the Legend and the Empire was the 15-inch version. The Epic isn't around anymore, so I can't even check their website.
Yeah, I'm looking right now for. Let's see if I got an image there. What?
Yeah. In any case, he was using a regular RCA subwoofer cable before, and all seemed well, but he decided to switch over to an XLR cable just to see what would happen, and he ordered said XLR cable off of Monoprice, and after he hooked it all up, he gets a very loud thump now whenever he just powers off his system, so he turns off his pre-pro and his subwoofer goes thump. So he's wondering if that's due to a faulty cable or if it's one or both, possibly of the XLR jacks. He's planning on just basically going back to his RCA cable since that was working fine, but he just is curious to know the cause of this thumping.
Yeah, that's not uncommon. This is Jay, right? I lost my list here. Here we are. Yes, I lost. Jay, it's not uncommon to have that sort of thump. We see this a lot with different subwoofers and stuff, and some subwoofers will just do it, and the other it comes from the pre-pro side or the there's usually some sort of soft on where they cut the signal to the sub, and then they power it. They power the sub down. This doesn't seem to be happening with over the XLR. Technically, it should not harm your sub.
Nope.
It is
it's just the capacitors basically dumping all their power at once. If you go ahead and just, if you click the little power rocker on the back that's next to the where you actually physically plug in the power cord to the subwoofer, usually every subwoofer will thump a little bit when you do that.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Usually what happens is on the pre-pro, they'll have a relay switch so that when you first turn things on, it will let the pre-pro completely power up, or the AV receiver sometimes completely power up, and then the little relay switch will kick, and that will allow the signal to go through to your speaker. And that prevents there being this, inrush of current, and sometimes you get a humming or a thump from that when you turn things on. And then it's the reverse when you turn things off. Usually they click off the relay, which cuts the signal that's going to your speaker, and then they power down the AV receiver or the processor. So in this case, it sounds as though maybe they had that relay on the RCA output, and not on the XLR. So in my opinion, this is probably the jack on the Sherborne.
It's got to be. Almost certainly. I mean, it might be that. And we should probably just blame Epic anyway, since they're out of business and they can't do anything about it. But it could be on the amp side, but I doubt it. So just don't. Yeah, it's not going to hurt anything. If it bothers you, go back to RCA. If you weren't having a problem with some sort of feedback, then you need to go to XLR anyways. So or interference or any sort of, I don't know, the cable acting like an antenna.
Interference is the only reason to do it.
Well. I mean, which would be totally weird. Be a good movie though. Anyways, so I wouldn't even worry about it. But it was a nice experiment. It's good for us because it gave us something to talk about. Jonathan, now it's football season again. He's ready to tailgate, but he wants better sound than the jam boxes and Beats pills. What the hell's a Beats pills? Is that like a
You
is
haven't
that
seen the
Beats?
ads for those silly little things?
I
A
don't know. I
battery-powered
haven't.
Bluetooth thingy that they call a pill, and yeah,
Is it made
that's
by
that's
Beats?
what everyone's doing now.
Does it have big? It has a
Yes, of
lowercase
course.
b on it. Yeah, of course it does. He's looking for good sound quality, loud output, long battery life, at least 5 hours, and low price. Bluetooth is not necessary in these suggestions. Rob, you go
Yeah,
first.
so I mean, this is not something I knew off the top of my head, but I just sort of looked around at various reviews, checked out Wirecutter, all those usual places that I go. So one that seems to be getting a lot of attention, it's by a company called G Project, and I think it was actually a Kickstarter project as far as I know when it first began. But they have a wireless Bluetooth box, which is very sort of ruggedized. It has a handle. It has a rechargeable lithium-ion battery in it that supposedly lasts about 6 hours, and everyone gives it praise for playing very, very loud. And the sound quality is probably obviously not the equal of what you have at home, but everyone seems very, very happy with it, and it's pretty much built just for tailgating. So that seems to be right up the alley, and it costs $99 on Amazon. So I don't know if that counts as low price, but that seems pretty reasonable to me
Yeah.
for checking all those boxes.
Here's my suggestion, Jonathan. I suggest you look into your garage and figure out which cordless power tools you have.
Hmm.
If you have like Rigid or DeWalt or something like that, and you have those lithium-ion batteries or whatever, or maybe you just are ready to upgrade those too, why don't you look into getting the radio that goes along with those things? Because you might already have 2 or 3 batteries
Mm-hmm.
and a charger. All you need is the boom box, and those things are pretty much indestructible. They usually have some sort of industrial case around them. They usually get really loud. They're you don't have to worry about getting them wet or full of dust or anything. They just you drop them off the back of the truck or the tailgate or whatever. You don't have to worry too much about it. A lot of times people throw them off. I've seen videos where they take like the Makita one and they toss it off the top of a building and a moving car and everything else. That's what and even if you pay a little bit more, well, this is something you'll actually use in a more than just a tailgating situation. This is something that maybe could be used as because a lot of times you can plug that thing in and use it as a charger for your battery. So now you have a second charger as well. So I would suggest looking into that. That would be my suggestion.
That's a
So
good one because I never would have thought of that. So
yeah, that's
I like that.
I bring in something to the table. Other than just humor, what's his name? Who says that Eliezer? Who says that's all I bring?
That was not what he said.
That's what he said.
Okay.
All right, Infinite Gary.
Shucks.
As a bit of a hypothetical, but if price were not the factor, we were sitting in a light-controlled room in the primary seat. Would we prefer the Stewart film screen? God, dude, so specific. Stewart film screen Studio Tech 130 or the Screen Innovations Black Diamond, and why? I didn't look up either of these screens. I am assuming that the Stewart film screen Studio Tech 130 is a normal screen, and the Black Diamond is somehow gray. Is it gray?
It
Or
is. It is extremely dark gray. Yeah. The HT guys, Home Theater and HD TV podcast, just had an interview with the fellows from Screen Innovation there. So yeah, I mean their Black Diamond screen it's actually like an aluminum backing. And then they have, I think, 8 layers of different coatings and things over top of it. And the idea is that it's one of these screens that really does a good job of rejecting ambient light that's at least coming in from the sides or the top. The idea is that any light that is directly hitting it from straight ahead gets reflected back very, very strongly, which, of course, the idea is to have your projector directly overhead or on a coffee table in front of you. So yeah, it's one of those screens for rejecting ambient light. So in
that
this
sounds like a
situation,
perfect recipe for hot spotting. Is that not me? That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a perfect recipe for hot spotting. And hot spots are when you're like looking at a screen. If you ever like those rear projections like those we used to have, where I think I reviewed them, which is Bishi, like a 70-inch or 79 or something like that, 80-inch one or something. It was huge,
mhm.
and the hot spots were it's like almost a halo. Like there's like one part that's really clear, and like there's this halo, and then it's sort of darker outside that halo, and you're like, you move your head around, and the little spot goes around with it. In this case, it was a big spot. That's what it sounds like a perfect. Okay, now if price were not a factor, I would not be looking at a gray screen in any way, shape, or form. I would not be looking at anything other than probably the cheapest, especially if you're in a light-controlled room. The cheapest, motorized drop screen, tension, tab tensioned drop screen. Price not a factor. That's why I'm going with tab tension. If not, I just go with the fixed screen. That had good. I mean, even then, dude, I think I'd rather just have a fixed screen because you get that nice velvet border that
Hmm.
really absorbs the light. I think I'd rather have that than the drop screen if price were not a factor. And I'd be looking like a 1.2 gain, and that's it. That's pretty much what I would just. I'd look with a nice tight weave. Wouldn't have to worry about any of that. You know, that's what I'd be looking for. I wouldn't be worried about gray and ambient light. And it's light controlled,
Well,
right?
because I mean, people are talking so much about specifically this. I mean, Stewart has their Firehawk. That was the one that sort of started the gray screen, ambient light rejecting craze, and then everybody else has hopped on that bagwagon. And again, supposedly this Black Diamond is kind of the best of breed in that you can have almost a normally lit room as long as all of that light is to the sides, and somehow none of it is coming from directly hitting the screen head on. Supposedly it works really, really well. I mean, I know Ara from the HD guys. I mean, he really loves his. However, I've heard from other people who got that screen that they're not really 100% happy with it because it has the problems that any screen that like this would have, which is that it starts off as a very dark gray. So whites never quite look 100% right. It's relying on contrast to make white look white. White never really looks perfectly white, and you do get some hot spotting and you get some sparkles on occasions and things like that. So, I mean, in this scenario that Gary's laid out, I would absolutely be going for a white screen. Thing is, personally, I wouldn't be going for either of these, even though the Film Screen Studio Tech 130 is almost like the standard for white screens in a light controlled room. I'd actually go for the JKP Affinity screen from Daylight, which is the one that Joe Kane designed, because that screen is the reference screen. It is as close to a perfect screen as it is possible to make, basically. So, cost no object. This scenario, that's the one I'm going for. JKP Affinity.
All right. Yeah, I'd probably just go cheap. Anyways, 'cause
Yep.
that's the way I roll. But even though I can never get quite past that price is no object thing. I see all these supercars, like when you watch like Top Gear and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I see all these supercars. I'm like, God, that looks like it'd be so much fun to drive on a track. I would have to own a track before I would even consider buying that car
Mm-hmm.
because you can't buy. Who wants to drive a Lamborghini in traffic? Not this guy. I mean, it just irritate me. I'm already irritated enough. But anyways, all right. Michael is still struggling a bit with his upcoming subwoofer purchase. The only thing he's sure of is that his current 10-inch Polk is not cutting it, and he cannot go over $500 Canadian, including taxes and shipping. So
Mm.
he's looking used. Rob has
Okay.
suggested the Klipsch Sub 12 and the SW112 that periodically go on sale in the meantime. Michael continues to look at all the subs he can find in his price range so far. Rob hasn't recommended any of them. Which are the
I
ones
have not.
which are the ones in his price range? Are they like Polks,
Yeah,
other Polks?
there was some other Polks. There was one from PSB. There was a 10-inch Klipsch. There was a couple others. I think there was an Energy sub in there. Maybe a Paradigm one as well. So, but all of them end up being these like 100 or 150 watt, 10-inch, quite small. Even the specs only claim to play down to 30 or 28. And Michael's made it clear he wants to really be hitting 25. He wants to be properly pressurizing the space that he has, which is sort of an open concept. It's not a gigantic open concept room, but it's a living room that has a kitchen that it's open to and a hallway. So, I'm looking at all those things and I'm like, none of these are going to really do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
I completely sympathize with having a budget and needing to stick to it. And the
Yep.
thing is, if Michael were in the States, this would be so easy
Yep.
because I would just tell him to go with the HSU STF2, which is a $350 sub if you're in the States. The thing is, I've mentioned that, and Michael's looking at that and he goes, well, that's a 10-inch sub. That has a 200-watt amplifier. It isn't gigantic, although it is physically larger than pretty much all the other subs that he's been able to come across. And he's like, what what is the difference? Like, just going by the specs, it doesn't look like it's all that different. So why am I sort of rejecting these ones that he's bringing up and saying that the HSU, if it weren't so ridiculous to import it to Canada and end up costing close to $600 after you go through it all, why aren't these other ones measuring up? What is it we're looking at? How do we know?
Well, a lot of times it's the entire picture. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're looking at a sub and it's like this little tiny box, and they're telling you that it can play down to 19 hertz, you just know that may be true, but it's not going to play down at 19 hertz to any volume that you'll be able to perceive, as being a volume, and it will not be able to fill up a room, very large room, much larger than a walk-in closet, with bass. It's just not physically possible. All right, it's just what it comes down to. It's not physically possible. So if you have a smaller driver, you need a huger box, and if you have a smaller amp, you need a larger ported box. That's just the physics of the thing. So you kind of look at the whole package and you go, okay, it's a 10-inch driver and a 12-inch cube, and it's got a 150 watt amp. Well, it's not going to play very low, and it's not going to play very loud. And if they're saying it can play low, then they weren't measuring it very loud. And if they say it can play loud, then it doesn't. They weren't measuring it very low. It's just they just can't really do it. It's just not possible. So you have to take the whole thing. It's like the whole the whole thing into consideration. Like when you see like the JL Audio ones, and here's a good perfect example. The JL Audio ones are the boxes are just as big as the drivers, just big enough to put the driver and the amp in there. But look at the size of the amps on those things. Look at the drivers. Look how heavy they are. The raw size alone, the raw weight alone tells you what is in that thing. Is it lead? Well, yeah, it's like a lot of cast iron because that's what they had to make that driver out of, and that's how much power they have to, because they had to withstand all this power in order to and have all this excursion in order to put out the output they want to try to put out with the driver that size and a box that small. I mean, they're overcoming physics through raw power, and
Right.
that's and engineering, and that can't be done for $500 in a 12-pound sub that's the size of 4 shoe boxes stacked on top of each other. It's just not possible. So for me, it's you have to look at the whole package. Yeah, you can't just say it's got a 10-inch driver. How good's the sub? I don't know. It's got a 12-inch driver. I don't know. Could be crap. I've seen a lot of 12-inch drivers that don't get down to past 30 hertz. Is that because 12-inch drivers can't? No, but that one couldn't. And it's because of the box and maybe the driver specs and a bunch of other stuff. So you have to kind of put it all together as a coherent whole. But really, what you're looking at is think of the trade-offs. Okay, if the box is small, the amp better be big. Okay, if the amp is big, the box doesn't have to be as big, but the driver better be robust. If there's no port,
on it.
yeah, if there's no port and it's a small box, and the driver's reasonable size, but the amp's not big, that should tell you something right there. There's not something in this equation is not adding up.
If there is a port, but the box is kind of small, that means that port is going to be resonating at a higher frequency.
Right.
That is just the physics of it. So, yeah, it is absolutely a combination of looking at it all. I mean, one of the reasons why the Klipsch Sub 12 and the SW112, which is the newer version of it that's replaced it in the lineup, I mean, their boxes are big. They're just as big as the PB1000 from SVS, for example. In fact, they're a little bit larger than that one. And they are a 12-inch driver, and they are a 300-watt amplifier, and they have a front-loaded slot port. And all of those things, you put those together, and normally they sell it at a price that's higher than SVS, and all of that makes sense because Klipsch is a retail brand. SVS is selling it to you internet direct. Now, luckily, they go on sale quite frequently for under $500, which is Michael's budget. And you put all that together, and it's like, well, that's an alternative. But all these other ones, I mean, by no means are we dying to have everyone pay more money. That's not our goal at all.
That's not my goal. That's for sure.
Not
That
even
is
close.
definitely for sure.
I would love to be able to tell you that these less expensive, physically smaller, maybe ported, maybe not, smaller wattage, smaller diameter drivers, I'd love to be able to tell you that they're going to stack up, but I can't. They just can't overcome the physics of it. And the price is a clue as well, because if they're selling in retail, you know that that's marked up 100% over the wholesale
Minimum.
price.
Minimum.
Minimum, yeah. So it's there's just no way around those things. Unfortunately, I wish there were.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, you really should be looking for something used. And the thing is it's
Mhm.
not us that's the problem here, really. It isn't, because your problem is it's not even, and your budget's not the problem either. That's nothing to do with it. The problem is that you want performance that's, what did he say, like 20,
25 hertz. He wants
20,
to
25 hertz?
solidly hit 25 hertz.
Solidly 25 means that you're probably reaching down closer to 20
Yep.
at the minus 3 dB point. Well, that is performance of a very high caliber. It's very easy to find a sub that goes solidly into 35 to 30 range.
Hmm.
That exists at your price point, no problem. But that's not what you said. You said you want to get down to that part, the part of the bass response where you really start feeling it, and you really start
Well,
feeling like it's a
like
real thing.
buzzing your teeth, blurring your vision types.
That's what you want, and in order to get there, it costs money, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. If you were okay with being closer to 30, 35 hertz, we'd have you stacked floor to ceiling. You get subwoofers. You wouldn't. All the ones that you suggested would probably be okay. That's not
Yeah.
that's not the issue. The issue is that you want this specific level of performance. And God love you, I agree with you 100%. I think it's worth waiting for, and you'll find it. You'll get there. All right. One of these subs will go on sale that Rob's talking about, or you'll figure out you'll find a used one. Keep an eye on whatever you're thinking. Do you guys have Craigslist or something like that? What do you guys got up
Oh,
there?
we got Craigslist, we got
Okay.
eBay.ca, and I mean, I'd look out for the HSU subs, the Outlaw Audio subs, the SVS subs, because some people are selling their SVS subs, the older models, now that the newer models
Look
are
for
out and stuff like
NSDs,
that.
man. NSDs are going to be on the market when people are
Exactly.
like, I want to get with 2000,
Yeah.
for sure. So
Yeah.
keep an eye out for it, dude. You'll get there. You'll get there, and you'll get that 20 hertz. And in fact, I'm hoping that you'll end up emailing us and say, "Oh, somebody sold their old whatever for $500, and
Hmm.
now I've got 19 hertz performance, and I'm in
Yeah.
audio
Yeah. See,
nirvana."
the biggest concern, the reason I've shot down some of these other ones is because it's not that I don't think they'd be an improvement over the quite underpowered Polk 10-inch that he has right now that really only plays down to maybe 40 hertz. It's not that these won't play lower or louder than that. It's just that you're going a half measure, right? You're not getting to what you say you want to get to, but you're spending upwards of $450. That means you're not going to be able to do that again in short order if you're sticking with that kind of budget. So it's kind of like, do you want to spend your entire budget to only get you halfway to where you want to be? If you're okay with that, then okay. But yeah, I don't like seeing anybody regretful of their purchase. That's really all it comes down to.
And that's what's going to end up happening if you don't get exactly what you want. You're going to end up feeling like you took that $500 and threw it away. And we
Yeah.
don't want you to do that. We don't want you to do that.
Because we've both been there, right? We've definitely been through that. So.
I spent $100 on the sub from Amazon, and it was awful. It was so. It was literally like I had taken money and burned it. That's how bad I felt about the purchase. And I listened to the Amazon reviews from people who had never owned a sub before. This is long before Audioholics. So, anyways, here we go. All right, Bruno has recently moved into a new house with a 22-foot by 16-foot by 8-foot living room, 22 by 16 by 8, where he
That's
will
a
be
nice
setting up
size.
his theater. It's a good size. Unfortunately, the left side is open to the dining room and kitchen, and the right side has large windows. He can paint, though probably not dark colors. Hey, it doesn't have to be dark. It just has to be not white, basically. Even then, I don't really care.
Neutral gray if you can. And hey, the good thing is neutral gray right now is like a hot thing,
It
decorator
is a hot
wise.
thing. My parents are going to paint my brother's room gray. They were like
Yeah.
talking to me about
So
what color grading.
that's fantastic. Just gray. You can do
Yeah.
gray.
You do great. Okay, he can paint, move things around, even the fireplace, which apparently is not attached to anything. It's a freestanding fireplace and has a chimney that I guess he can move over some. And cover the windows. He's also considered going with a front projection system. Nothing wrong with that. In this case, you might actually want one of those light projecting screens.
Possibly. Yeah.
Might be. Might be. He isn't necessarily looking for any specific recommendations right now. Instead, he's just trying to come up with a game plan on how to go about selecting his gear. Should you pick out the projector first and then use that choice to determine the screen? Should you pick out the screen first and use that to determine his projector? Should he decide on his audio first and use that to dictate his screen? And when he's picking out his projector and screen, how should he weigh the parameters? Throw distance, light output, placement flexibility, material roll down versus fixed gain. There's so much to consider and balance. He knows there isn't an exact recipe or correct order, but he'd like our take on how to approach this planning phase. He's got a very nice-looking house. I would like to live with Michael here. This is Michael Bruno. I like to live with Bruno. Bruno, can I move in with you? I have a gimpy leg, and I require ice and Vicodin. I will provide the Vicodin. You might have to help me out with the ice. All right. Okay. Rob, go first.
Oh wow. Okay. Thanks, man. Yeah. So this. I feel for you, man, because almost any room I walk into now, I mean, obviously not my own, anybody's house that I visit or whatever, I can't help but just think, gosh, how would I set up a theater in here? What would I do? So this is one of those things where you are looking at an entire system. And unfortunately, the best piece of advice I think I can give to you is try not to get into the mindset of, I am going to select one thing, lock in that choice, and then build the rest of my system out from that. That is a very logical way to come at it, but what works better is more of a give and take. Because you're going to figure out as you're going along in the planning before you've purchased anything, what sort of things you really, really want. And those are going to become the priorities. And once you can start to figure out what your priorities are, then that starts to narrow down the choices. And so there's some back and forth. You know, you might discover when you're planning this out, gosh, what I'd really like to do is during the day, I'm not necessarily going to be watching movies on a gigantic screen. Maybe I want to have a flat panel on my front wall that I can watch during the day, and then have a big screen that can drop down in front of it at night when I'm watching my movies. And then, you know, the windows on the side and the slightly lighter colored walls and those things, not as much of a problem. If you decide that's what you want to do, well, then you've just figured out you're going to need a roll down screen, and you've just figured out, you know, maybe you're going to want it to be acoustically transparent. And that's going to start to affect what audio components you're going to purchase, because if they're going to fit behind the screen and you don't want to have your screen way out from the front wall, then they're going to have to be quite narrow from front to back, or maybe even on-wall speakers. So the planning phase is really about figuring out the big picture and figuring out the priorities of what it is you want to have. I wouldn't start, I can tell you, by choosing your projector. I would not start with choosing your projector. The projector I would figure out probably last, because if you figure out what type of screen you want in terms of, do you want it to be rolled down or a fixed frame that's hanging on the wall? Do you want to be using it during the day? If you figure out the screen and the screen size and that, then that will definitely dictate more what projector will work best with that and within the budget that you have as well. So for me, it's probably mostly starting with the viewing experience. Thankfully, you've already got your room, and you're already, you know, given the information that you've told to us, quite aware of the limitations of your room, and that is the real starting point. A lot of people sort of don't think of the room as being the largest limiting factor, and it is. And he's already got his seating and that set up in a way that looks very, very reasonable. I don't imagine he's going to stray too far from what he has in terms of seating. So with those things more or less already set up, I would decide on what you want your viewing experience to be overall first. Tom, from there?
I would, okay, first of all, before I did anything, I would figure out what I'm going to do with that fireplace of his. Because he's got like this freestanding fireplace that's about just a little, okay, so if you take the entire front wall where his TV and or screen or anything is going to be, on the left of it is a door, and then just off of center, to just maybe slightly to the left of center, is this freestanding fireplace, and then to the right of that, next to the other wall, is kind of where he's got his television, which I think from where he's sitting probably looks like about a 10-inch screen. So far away, you need a big screen, dude, for sure. But I would figure out where that can actually go reasonably without upsetting the fashion police or whatever this decor. Not the police, and making and not burning people as they're walking in and out of that door, sort of thing. So if that can move over a little bit, then you can kind of figure out where you can go, and then you also have to talk to screen peoples about putting things near that. If that thing's just for looks, well then yeah, you can drop a screen in front of it. But if you're going to use it during the winter, because there's that on one of those walls, I think that's a big old radiator. Is that like a big old radiator thing? That's what it looks like. And I
Towards the back of the room.
no, to the left of the room, to the left of next to
Oh,
the door.
oh, you're right. Yeah, that could be a big old
And there is one
radiator.
in the back of the room too. So if that fireplace is just for looks and you're not going to use it, well then you can drop a screen in front of it. But if you're actually going to use it, then yeah, you're going to have to kind of figure that part out. That being said, I think you need to treat the way I did this is I had an Excel chart and I had not just an Excel chart. I mean, you don't have to do it with Excel. I did Excel, but basically, I had I had different speaker combinations that I was looking at, different subwoofers I was looking at, sort of like, and I would reorder them, kind of based on, hey, based on prices I can find right now and what's going on with, and what I think my room's going to look like and all this stuff. This is what I got. I had stuff with floor standing speaker, stuff with bookshelf, stuff with dipole surrounds or bipole surround stuff with, what I mean? I had all stand mounts, everything sort of kind of just did the shopping thing from a number of different angles. Like, hey, if I want something that's going to be on wall, what on wall speakers would I want? Oh, I'd probably want these. These would probably be the ones I want. I just kind of filed that away. And then as I kept on Audioholics and the different websites and was reading reviews, I'd go, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Maybe I'll put that in
a
there.
lot of keeping stuff in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I do, so that when I'm ready to buy, I'm like, okay, well, I know the I'm going to have this much room for a screen. I'm going to want to have just a projector, or I'm just going to want to have a flat screen with the projector that drops in front of it. For every once in a while, I don't, what I mean. So kind of where you're going to go, and then you have all these sort of options. Like, yep, okay. That's the way I would do it, almost like fantasy football lineup, and then at the very last minute, you got to tinker with your team and get your players. I've been watching the league too. Sorry, so got that going. A lot of Netflix over the last couple of days. So that's the way I would handle it. I would handle it like you need first, second, and third string speaker options. These are the speakers I want if I'm going to go bookshelf. These are the speakers I'm going to want if I'm going to go towers. These are the speakers I want on walls or in walls. In his case, he may actually go, because I'm looking at the back of his room, he might actually go in ceiling for his rear. I don't know. I guess you could go rear backs.
I mean,
on that back wall
with
there.
having surround speakers on stands myself.
Yeah.
But maybe that wouldn't work aesthetically.
That right behind that couch there, it walks to the outside, but it's a sliding door over on that other side. But he looks like he could have light control in there. It looks pretty. It looks like a really nice place. I'm gonna come live with him. Bruno, I'm moving in.
Yeah,
nice.
I mean,
I'll help you
for
pick it
folks
out.
who might not be Bruno, because I mean, I feel fairly confident that Bruno is probably leaning more towards the visual experience.
Yeah.
Just based on the way he stated his questions and that. But the thing is, some people are going to be coming into this, and their absolute top priority is going to be their audio, or it might even just be a stereo pair. That is their 100% top priority, is listening to music on a stereo pair. And so for that person, it's like, yeah, you're going to make your speakers your top priority, and then you're going to do whatever you do with the video to work around that. Whereas if the video is your top priority, then you're going to start with the screen and you're going to do whatever you have to do with the speakers to work around that. Or, if you're half and half and you care equally about audio and video, then it is going to be this balancing act, and there's going to have to be some give and take, because this isn't a purpose-built from the ground up dedicated room for a theater. So there are going to be some compromises in this. But yeah, locking in one choice isn't the way to do it, and I would start with figuring out the screen size and how you're going to achieve that first.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big things you have to start off with. I think is figuring out where that fireplace is going to go, what kind of screen you're going to be able to utilize, what kind of screen you want, and whether or not you're going to have a flat panel for the day and a screen for night and that sort of thing. So there's a lot to consider.
Yeah,
but
I totally sympathize, because I mean, it is a daunting task.
Yeah.
You're thinking it's a lot easier when all you're doing is buying one television. Then okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty easy. But in a whole theater, it is a complete system and a complete package. So allow yourself the give and take, and don't feel bad if you think you've made a decision and then something else comes up and you go, oh man, I have to rethink that decision.
Yeah, that's part of the fun
Allow
too.
yourself that
That's
freedom.
part of the fun. I mean, and what you do right now, you're like, okay, I already know that SVS is in HSUs are kind of the two top ones that Tom and Rob always recommend. Rhythmic falls in that category as well, though we don't. JL Audio falls in that category as well. Those are, you pick something from them, you're going to be fine if you can afford it. So, the easiest thing to do right now is just go, okay, these are the sort of from in the subwoofer category. I'm really interested in this from SVS, this from HSU, this from Rhythmic, or something like that. And you put those down. You're like, okay, my subwoofer is kind of done. I don't have to think about that anymore. And then as you're kind of, you're like, okay, well, now that I've finished that, you almost feel like you got something started. And now you can kind of start thinking about the size of your screen and everything else. And once you come up with this stuff, let us know. We'll maybe help you kind of whittle it down. But that's basically what I did. I had like kind of a running, I had a list, and I would put the top of my list, you know, whatever speakers, or because speakers were most important to me, because that's what I knew I wasn't.
I started there too.
So you know, I had at the top of my list my top speakers, and it changed constantly. You know, it was AV123 for a while when they had those Rocket whatever it was that I liked, and then it was Axiom Audio, and then it was, oh God, I can't even remember. So many different ones floated in and out of my field of view, and I'd reject them for one reason or another. Oh, you know, I read this about them, and that is not something I know. I know I won't like that, or the price is too high, or the price is too low, and there's no way that can be any good for that price. And you know what I mean? And it just kind of factored things through, and I ended up, when it was time for me to buy, my top choice was Axiom, and I was really happy with it. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, mine was a fun case in the theater I have right now. You know, I knew I wanted the Ascend acoustic speakers with the Rowell ribbon tweeters. That I knew for 100% sure, but I was looking at the layout, and I go, okay, I know where I want my TV, and my TV is a priority to me too. I wanted to have the screen size that I wanted to have, and I wasn't going to compromise on that. And I figured out how I was going to install that screen size, and then I realized, you know what? The speakers that Ascend has, physically, they're not going to fit. They're just not physically going to fit in that setup when my screen is also a priority. And the only reason it worked out is because, thankfully, get in touch with Dave Fabricant over at Ascend. He's like, yeah, we can make custom-sized cabinets for our speakers. We can design that and do that for you. And I was like, well, there you go. But that was the linchpin. That if that hadn't happened, I would have ended up with different speakers. So, yeah, you know, it can be that type of thing. So, yeah. It's a fun process.
Alex, this was from Facebook. He got a pair of used Klipsch KLF20 towers. I'm going to have to click on the link now so I can figure out what they are.
They are biggies. They are biggie speakers.
All right, hold on. It's coming up. It's coming up. It's coming up. Yep, they are. They're Wapas. What are those, like 12s? Are those 12s in them?
I am not sure what size those drivers are, but they ain't small. It's an older speaker as well.
Two 10-inch. Yeah.
Okay.
Two 10-inch woofers, a mid-range with what is that? A 1.5-inch compression mid-range horn-lidded thing, and a 1-inch polymer diaphragm compression driver for the tweeter. Jesus. Okay, you got to compare those speakers, and after some minor repair work, he's very happy with their sound. I bet they sound pretty good. I bet they do. I bet they sound pretty good.
Dynamic, if nothing else.
Yes, I bet they're loud. They're rated at 100 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter. Of course they are. I would expect nothing less from Klipsch. In fact, I'm surprised that they're not. Anyways, the Polk, he's got a Polk center speaker, which is rated at 91 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter. One would assume, though that might not be the case.
Yeah, one might assume. I'm not sure. That's all they list is the efficiency of 91 dB, nothing else. Yeah.
So it could be at 100 watts for all we know. After running.
Now that would be some fudging. That would be awesome.
Why are these speakers so quiet? Why is my amp going into oscillation? Okay, after running Wipeout, which is the room correction system from Yamaha, his receiver sent his mains to 0 dB and his center to +6. Could this mismatch be harmful in any way? My first reaction, Rob heard it right before the podcast, was, if you only got a 6 dB difference out of these two speakers, I am shocked. I am shocked. There is no way you should have only gotten a 6 dB difference between the two speakers. I would have fully expected the mains to be set down as low as it could possibly go, and the center to be set as high as it possibly could go, and they would still not be level matched.
Well, maybe
that's what I would have
expected. Master volume to 0 before he runs Wipeout.
Oh, shut up! I don't care. That's Wipeout. That's not Odyssey. Shut up.
Give it a try, Alex. I'd love to see if it actually does anything. That would be hilarious.
All right. I want to know, first of all, can you go and manually change these settings to get past 0 dB? Because maybe 0 is the lowest it goes on whatever receiver. Do we know what receiver?
Or maybe +6 is as high as it
That's
goes.
what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if 0 is as low and 6 is as high. In which case, well, then
Well,
yeah,
I'm sure it can go below 0. I've never seen one that can't do a
I've
trim level
never
below
either.
0. But
Maybe it's got
I
something in the manual that says that it starts the mains at 0 and everything else gets adjusted to that. That would
yeah.
be weird, but it's not. I mean, these are AV manufacturers. The whole weird stuff happens all the time. So, okay. So if you only got a 6 dB difference, I would not worry too much about it, except that I think that is wrong. Uh, could the mismatch be harmful in any way? This is where the harm comes in, okay? What I think, I'm speaking for Rob now, what I think is that the clips are so much more efficient that there's no way you can level match that Polk center channel accurately with with these other speakers. I just don't think it can be done. So what ends up happening is you end up putting way more power into the Polks than you normally would have to at a given volume because the clips are so much more efficient that you're putting nothing into them. So you would put as little as possible into the clips, and they would still be playing louder than the Polks at max volume, being the difference in the trim volumes. That's where your possibility of damage comes in, is that your amp and everything and speakers will start clipping because you can't level match them accurately. But here you're only 6 dB difference, which should be well within the range of the adjustments that can be set by on any AVR. Any receiver should be able to do greater than 6 dB difference, which means that these are supposedly, and the only thing I can think is maybe that center channel is way in front of those other towers.
Yep.
That's about the only thing I can think is that the center channel is way forward, like sitting on the guy's lap. You know?
I mean, it could also be a case that it's actually resonating in some way. It could be stuffed into a cubby or something like that, and actually getting something of a boost.
Yeah, boost because of that.
That
Yeah.
Wi-Fi is detecting there. But I mean, the thing is, it's not as though, I mean, your ears are going to give out way before those clip speakers.
Yeah.
Are,
Oh yeah.
Are getting anything even close to like 10 watts going through them. You're just never going to be turning it up that loud, and all you're doing is getting your center speaker to play equally as loud as the clips. So I mean, the clips are going to be sipping power. They're going to be sipping fractions of a watt. If your center speaker ends up requiring 10 watts in order to equal what they're doing at, zero point 0.1 of a watt, it's not as though your AV receiver can't supply that. You're fine. So there, you're not going into your AV receiver and rewiring anything. If you're within the user parameters that you can set in terms of safety, in terms of possibly damaging your AV receiver, no, that's not going to happen.
Or not the speaker either, really, not unless you're turning it very, very loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't believe that there's only a 6 dB difference between these two speakers. It just doesn't make sense. It's got to be shoved in the cabinet, like you said. I didn't think about that, or pushed way forward. That's the only other thing I can think of. But it'd have to be way forward. It'd have to be like a meter in front of the other ones at least.
This is one where I would be very tempted to set my trim levels manually.
Yeah.
Just go in there, have the test tones play, get my own SPL meter, and set those manually. Because I can't I can totally believe that the center speaker is set to +6. I can't believe that the front mains, those towers, are only set to 0.
Yeah, I can't believe that either.
Because how big is your room and how far away are those speakers? That's the one I'm surprised those aren't at like -12. That's what I would be expecting.
Yeah. I see. I would expect -12 on one end and +12 on the other. That's what I would expect.
Well, not that. They shouldn't be that far.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
I would be looking at least about 10 or 12 dB apart, though. Yeah. -6 and +6 would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. Bill is beginning he just bought a new house. He has a full basement with tall ceilings. About half of it is finished. He wants to take part of the unfinished space and turn it into a dedicated home theater. Yay!
Awesome.
All right, Bill's going to have lots of questions as he goes along, but right now he's just concerned with the dimensions of the room, the unfinished portion of the basement. There is a rec room with a whatever. That unfinished area has a finished ceiling that is 8 feet. Okay, so the unfinished area has a finished ceiling that is 8 feet 8 inches high. So the room is 8 feet 8 inches tall.
Yeah.
And it has bare studs on the walls, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a space that is 14 feet wide and 19 feet 9 inches long. Once they finish the walls, that'll be a little bit smaller. You lose a little bit of that So, whatever.
Not a ton though.
No,
You're
just
really only talking
how
about
much how much
drywall.
drywall you putting up there, Hoss? He could potentially move some walls, so he really wants to make his theater with the best dimensions possible. He's planning on just a single row of seats. We like to have a front projection system, of course. It's a home theater.
Yeah.
He's unsure of things like projector throw distance, ceiling mounts in a higher than 8-foot ceiling, how large of screen he can install, blah, blah, blah. So is the current unfinished space big enough? Should he move some walls, and how should he plan things out for his projector and screen? All right, so he's got his floor plan attached here. All right, so it's, what is it? It's 14 feet
14
wide
wide.
and 19, let's say 19 and a half
Sure.
inches long. Uh, yeah, man, you're going to be able to have a monster screen in there. I guess
If you
this is
want.
one of those things where it sounds like, again, he's more interested in the video than the audio. I think he's more worried at this point by the video than the audio. So you can, in that size room, have a wall-to-wall screen at the front of that place if you wanted to. And it would probably be fine. You'd have to have on-wall or in-wall speakers behind it, which is perfectly fine. I mean, if that's what you want. Now, if you want something with more traditional speakers, well, then you have to factor those in, and then change your screen size accordingly. But yeah, I would. I don't think that you need to change any dimensions here, dude. That with a one row of seats, you've got
Yeah.
plenty of room, and you'll be sitting
Yeah,
far
if you
enough
were going,
away.
if he had said that he really wants 2 rows of seats, then
Yeah,
we've got to be a little bit careful. It could definitely be done in a
yeah.
room that's a
I
little
would
over
want
19 feet
25
long.
feet. I think 25 feet would be my sort of
That'd be like ideal. Yeah.
ideal guesstimation for just like without me measuring stuff and actually thinking about it. I
But
would
yeah,
say
one of the
25
things he
feet for two
wants
rows.
one of the things he wants to do is directly beside this unfinished space where he's going to be building his theater, he has the finished portion of his basement, and he wants that to be able to enter from that finished portion into this what's going to be his theater, and he would like that entrance to basically be the back of his theater, so he'd be
That's where I'd want
walking.
the back of his theater
Yeah.
to be too.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that, then it would be really nice. I mean, I would want at least 4 feet of space behind the seats. So between that back wall where the entrance door is going to be and the back of the seats, I would want a minimum of 4 feet. But I mean, that would give you, at these dimensions, about 15 feet to the front wall, which is more than I really think is necessary for a single theater, a single row theater. You're starting to get into some pretty darn large screen sizes, even if you just want to keep up with the SEMPTE recommendation of a 30-degree field of view. I mean, I'm personally much more comfortable with about a 12 to 13 distance. From eyes to screen, 12 to 13 feet, I think works really nicely for a home theater that you'd be, more or less putting together yourself. And that gets you into screen sizes that are more reasonable. You'd be looking at more like 120, maybe a 135-inch screen size if you like the bigger screen experience. But you definitely have the leeway here. If you can have as much as 15 feet, that even opens up the possibility of having a false wall with an acoustically transparent screen and the speakers positioned behind the screen.
Yeah.
That would almost be a wall-to-wall screen. So yeah, the dimensions don't seem like a problem. The only thing I might think is it depends on how many seats you want to have across that row. If you only want 3 seats, you're golden. If you want 4,
Yeah.
14 feet wide starts to get tight. There's
Yeah.
not going to
I
be a
think.
lot of space on either side.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think
Yeah.
four is going to be a little tough. You're going to have like one couch and everybody's going to be touching each other.
Yeah, you could
Uh,
maybe do like love seat in the middle, arm on side of that, and then 2 more
yeah.
seats outside of that. But you'd only have like a 2.5 foot walkway on either side of that. It starts to get a little bit squishy. So if there were any wall I'd be moving, I'd be wanting to make the room maybe a little bit wider. Maybe 16 feet wide is a really nice width for a theater room if you want to have like a four
Looks like he's
seat.
got the room for it. The question I would have here too is like, what is he going to do as far as subwoofers too? Because
Mm-hmm.
he's looking at. Okay, so right now the way this room looks. Are we going to post this? I don't know if we're going to post this.
I won't unless he says it's unless he
Okay.
says.
Anyways, right now the media area has a door that opens up into this is like the finished media area that has like a pool table. So goes into unfinished area. You have to walk through there and then walk into this where the theater is, where the theater is going to be the the door is like in the back, what would be the back left corner of the room, if you were, based on the way that we're configuring this. So that would be the back left corner of the room. Well, if we get rid of that door and we put a door in the middle of the back wall, which would be, you'd be walking in like right underneath the projector, which would be fine. You could put subs in all four corners, which that's what I would do. But you have to close off that door. So now the only entrance into this media room is through your media area, through the home theater is through this media area. So is that what you want, or do you have to have another door into this other unfinished area? So if you could close off that door, that wall, and then add a door into the home theater right underneath the projector, then I think it becomes a real theater. And you can really put your subs everywhere. You can do your false wall. You can move that wall out a little bit, I guess, if you were going to do that. You get yourself enough room for four seats.
Another thing he could do, subwoofer-wise, is that since he's looking at having about a 19-foot long room, if he doesn't change anything, he'll have at least about a 19-foot long room. He could have two subwoofers at the midpoints of the two side walls, and I'd probably at that point go with like cylinder subs so that they take up the least amount of foot space. But you could have those at the midpoints because those would only be slightly less than 10 feet into the room from either the front or the back wall. And then if your seats were back at, let's say, 14 feet, you'd have a nice, easy walkway between the front of the seats and wherever the subwoofer is going to be on that side wall. You wouldn't have any blockages that way. So you could have well, I'm just saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be four subs, one in each corner. You could. No,
I might even prefer. If I were him, I think I'd probably be thinking about the corner, two in the opposing corners, or four in all four corners.
All four corners.
Mostly just because I think from sightline, the sightline sort of thing. Especially if it ends up with like a drop screen or front right there in that corner, and you wouldn't see it. It ends up being, you don't want to have that cylinder sub sitting. I mean, I don't mind, but I'm a nutcase. So, I mean, if it were me, that's what I think I'd put him in the opposing corners, just for sightline reasons. But if he's not, especially if he's not going to close off that door.
You could always lay the cylinder subs down on their sides, and then they'd just be resting in those floor to wall corners there. You all right?
No, I don't like that. It's stupid. I don't
Why
like
not?
it. I'm sorry. I don't like. I just think that's just.
You don't like...
I just can't imagine ever thinking to myself, "Wow, there's probably a dead body rolled up in the carpet," because that's what it would look like.
You wouldn't even see it.
You would see it. You people would walk in before the movie started and go, "What the hell is that on the ground over there?" Don't worry. I'm going to put plastic down before I shoot you, but then we're going to roll you up in that. I'm going to throw you in the lake. Come on. It looks weird. It does. I'm not saying it can't do it. I'm just saying. All right. That's how you do a podcast, Haas. All right? That's hour 27.
There you go.
That is, Mr. 2 hours and 15 minutes. I gave you guys 15 minutes plus back of your lives by doing this podcast the way I want to do it. Let you go all crazy with this thing. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be having our after party. After every podcast, we like to hold a little after party on Google Hangouts. So if you haven't friended me on Google+, please do. You can do that from the AV Rant website. There's Google+ signs in places. I think on the top right now in the I think I just changed it because it was going to something weird. But it now goes to my Google+. On the top right, there's a little Google+ sign, and on the AV Rant page, and it will take you to my Google+ thing, and that's where you can find our live recordings. You can also find friend me or put me in a circle or whatever the hell it is they call it on Google+, and I will do the same thing back to you, and you will get a notice of our things, and then you also get a notice of our after parties, which start usually at 11 p.m. on Tuesdays. We do record on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go to www.avrant.com for more information and comment on the podcast. You can facebook.com/avrantpodcast. Contact Rob at rob@avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com. You can also come to Twitter and at FirstReflect for Rob or at avrant_Tom for me. If you want to get a hold of me, every once in a while I get somebody Facebook messaging me from some company that wants me to do a review of their products that couldn't figure out how to get in touch with me, and I think, seriously? You want me to review your product for the podcast, and you can't figure out how to get in touch with me. It's not like we don't talk about it every single time, at least twice, maybe 3 times. So shut up. I don't even respond to those friend requests. That's how bad I've gotten about this whole thing. All right.
I think it's good we're ending a little bit earlier than we normally do.
Do we got anything else, or is that it?
That's it. CD is coming up next week. We'll have a pile of news from that, I'm sure. But
Yes.
That's what's coming up.
Yes. That will be exciting. All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
And for all you guys waiting for the after party, you're going to have to give me probably about 15 minutes, but I will be starting it sooner rather than later. Okay, we're not going to wait till 11 because I need to go to bed. Bye.